Darling, are you awake? Good morning, sweetheart. Or, good evening, I suppose I should say. We appear to have slept away the remainder of the day. Silly us. Well, how does a fresh pot of tea sound, I'll just get up quickly and go get some water boiling and then... Oh. You don't want me to leave? Oh, my sweet little cuddle bear. All right, darling. I suppose a spot of evening tea can wait for now. So, come here, my beautiful bean. You know, these little moments with you, my love, when we slow down for a while and just be with each other, I live for these. Not that I don't live for other things too, of course. I would be bedridden without a good shepherd's pie in this world, but when it's just you and me, it feels like all is right with the world. Apologies, I don't mean to get all sappy all of a sudden. It's just waking up next to you in my bed like this. It's a gift. A gift from the Empyrean heavens, I might even say. I'd even be willing to wager you're marked with the seal of the Empyrean 3. A proof of purchase, as it were. Signed from the gods of Imperia to Lumen, bungling wizard of cadence. Ah, but the Empyrean. You might not know what I'm talking about. I did promise to tell you about the gods of our world, but I wouldn't want to talk your ear off now, after we've only just awoken. Truly, you enjoy listening to me speak. Well, thank you, my love. That's going to go straight to my head, you know. Once I really get talking, you might not be able to stop me. I'm joking, my dear, of course. I like to believe I'm not without the social tact to notice when you've had enough of my yammering. You just let me know if I'm rambling too much, or just give me a few nudges. I'll understand. So, the gods, the gods, the gods. What is a god? A god, in this world anyhow, is a locus of immense knowledge and power, each with its own unique strengths and values, as well as its own brand of behavior and habitual tendencies. They are overseers of our world, and they hold within the balance all that which allows us mortals, you and me and all the rest, to exist. If the lands of Rhyme were a dinner plate resting upon a point the size of a needle, and stay with me on this, the gods are weights circled upon the edges of the dinner plate, strategically placed so as to prevent the plate from falling out of balance. It's a rather crude and, mind you, quite metaphorical analogy, but I find it makes the most sense when visualizing the influence of gods upon the material plane. Each weight has its own counterweight that negates the other's pull, thus keeping the center of the plate level. There would be no divine order, no profound understandings, if there were not also great chaos for it to arise from. We could never know the warmth of the sun's rays if there were no winter chill for them to banish. And life would mean nothing without death to hold it in careful balance. Oh, look at me. I've gone all philosophical again. My apologies, darling. I'll quickly rattle off a few facts just to lend a bit more rigidity to your understanding. There are 8 gods in total. Technically 9, depending on who you ask, but I'll get to that in a moment. The first 3 you've likely heard of somewhere at some time. They're quite hard to miss, especially here in the capital. The very walls sing their praises, and everywhere from the cobbled stones beneath us to the golden arcades overhead, and the glimmering spires beyond, their glory is reflected. They are Helio, god king of sunlight, Indra, master of sea and sky, and Meridia, the great mother. Often they're referred to together as the Empyrean Three. The name is derived from the plane in which they reside, the Empyrean heavens, or Empyrea, for the sake of brevity. Empyrea is a paradise realm where the grass is green as can be, and oceans of white gold clouds are bejeweled with mountains of diamond, sapphire, and emerald. Supposedly it varies greatly depending on whose specific domain you visit, but I digress. They're also known as the good gods, and it's no secret why. They've championed the banner of Mortalkind since the dawn of history as we know it. Personally, I think the complexity of the gods goes beyond such simple words as good and evil, which are almost entirely rooted in the perception of the one who utters them. But it's plain to see that the Empyrean Three nourish and strengthen the whole of mortal life on Rime. Non-mortals, however, the undead and others who exist outside the natural proceeding of womb to tomb, generally don't seem to be shown the same amount of beneficence. With that being said, though, the Empyrean Three and their many champions through the centuries have made Ordania what it is today. The most civil and advanced culture there ever was. That we know of, anyway. Anywho, it's my belief that we should refrain from mistaking the Empyrean Three as mere parts of one singular entity. True, they are allied in their divinity. They keep out of each other's way, but each Empyrean, in essence, is entirely unique. They act independently. It isn't as though one must consult the other in order to invoke their will. They're closer to siblings, if anything, or some other configuration of familial figures. It's unclear who among them is the eldest, but we do know that they act in harmony, and appear, at least, to be working toward the same goal, if that goal is perpetuating mortal kind. But the way in each god operates is quite different from the other two. For example, Helio, or the Holy Father, as his devout tend to hail, is much more associated with combat and warfare than the other Empyreans. A battle fought with honor, a war waged upon injustice, a revolt against tyranny. Righteous glory is the name of Helio's game. It's little mystery that the zealous knights of Ordania would happily plunge into the depths of adversity to earn his favor. They love bravery, and they despise cowardice, or really any underhanded method to achieving anything. Take the sons of Helio, that quite literally shining example of the God King's tenets. Have you seen them around? You would know. They each plate their armor with enough gold to purchase a small estate, and their armaments are crusted with precious jewels from all over Rime. I'm sure you can imagine they don't take to stealth and subterfuge quite so readily as, say, a druidic circle of Meridia. No, I'm sure if a son of Helio ever stabbed a person in the back, it was because their opponent stepped out of the way. That isn't even to mention their disdain of ranged combat. It's common for these knight chapters to prefer fighting face to face, but these sons of Helio are vehemently opposed to even handling a bow, let alone using one in battle. But I'm getting off topic again. I'd love to tell you more about the many chapters of knights in Ordania another time, though. Even if I'm of a more imaginative persuasion, I do find the knights quite fascinating in all their ways. Much like the Empyrean Three, I suppose, they too serve a common purpose, and yet differ greatly upon their methods and values. And just as the entirety of the gods, some knight factions are labeled as good, and others as evil. Now, the other Empyreans. Next, I suppose we can discuss Indra, goddess of life. Naturally, she's the favorite of many healers across Ordania. Peace, mercy, compassion. She's certainly the most good of all the good gods. The only warriors who pledge combat in her name are strictly defenders and bulwark types, only seeking to punish attackers rather than seizing the initiative against potential threats. Also, plenty of clerics and even some druids owe their faith primarily to the master of sea and sky. She's called this quite simply because her avatar possesses both a scaled tail with fins and a pair of feathered wings, while otherwise appearing to be a buxom woman with flowing hair. Indeed, her avatar has actually been said to roam the waters of the Sapphire Sea, accompanied by her merfolk handmaidens. I've studied quite a few well-documented accounts of capsized sailors being rescued by Indra and her handmaidens during what would have been their final moments, particularly during violent storms at sea. It's quite a comforting thought, especially considering how rare it is for any other god to manifest within the material plane. Seriously, it is extremely rare for a mortal to witness the visage of a god. Seeing one through prayer or ritual of some kind is more common, but for an actual avatar to appear is almost unheard of. Almost. Anyway, sailor accounts also report that water-dwelling predators known as sirens have a tendency to imitate Indra's likeness, luring in unsuspecting sailors with their song and their beauty, before dragging them beneath the waves, never to be seen again. Quite the harrowing ruse, but I've also heard that sirens are fearful of swimming near the surface during storms, so I suppose that's one way to know the difference. I'm not much one for sailing, anyway. My constitution has never allowed for more than a short ferry along the coastline. Any longer, and I start spewing like you wouldn't believe. Luckily, though, most places I would ever want to go to can be reached on foot or on horseback. Although a cruise through the Turellian Isles would be a nice getaway, I admit. And then there's Mortalkind across the Shadowed Sea to the southwest, where mages and sorcerers are as common as knights are here in Ordania. What I wouldn't give to visit there, even at the risk of my health. But who knows, actually. Perhaps, if I play my cards right, I can get an inn at a local mages guild, like the Five Flames. Someplace where I might be able to learn portal magic. Oh well, it's quite a low priority at the moment, as I'm already trying to get my bearings here in our new home, much less in a whole other continent, where the customs and currency are wildly different from those of Ordania. But you know something else about Mortalkind. They actually venerate the Great Mother Meridia. A fine segue, isn't it? I might be a bit of a rambly shyster, but I always try to bring the topic back around to heart. But, Meridia, goddess of earth. When you hear someone speak the words Mother Nature, it is she they hail. Meridia is an interesting goddess, to be sure. Certainly the most chaotic of the Empyrean Three. At any time she can be utterly pleasant, very warm and welcoming, and loving, in fact. And the next moment she can turn heel and manifest just as much wrath as fury itself. That's another god to discuss in a moment. Fury. He goes by another name, but I digress. The Great Mother is the ultimate figure of worship for druids everywhere. She's largely the reason why the undead are so hated in this kingdom, because Meridia is all about the natural proceeding of life and death, organic growth and decay. Anything which supersedes this process is a perversion in the eyes of her followers. You can imagine necromancy is quite the contentious subject among my would-be peers. Not that I have any interest in raising the dead, of course, but you know us wizards. We like to poke around, see what we can learn, in almost every instance regarding nearly any problem. But after all, these bodies we inhabit, the food and water we drink, and indeed the very land upon which we stand, has all been borrowed from the Great Mother herself. We must give it all back eventually, lest we feel her divine scorn. So, how are you feeling, my love? Still captivated by my rambling? You haven't fallen asleep, have you? I suppose that'd be all right. Maybe you find my voice just that soothing, or perhaps I've the power to bore you to sleep. Either way, I don't mind, so long as you take comfort, my darling. Just relax and let your lumen babble the night away. Now then, you've heard about the Empyrean Three, but what of the others? Where to begin? I did mention Fury a moment ago. He is Gethrynnyn, the god of fury, also called the Furious One. Care to make a guess about his temperament? Yes, he is one angry fellow, it's true. Every storm, every crack of thunder and bolt of lightning is due to his rage. Or so the story goes, anyway. He came to be known as Fury among sailors, because many of them had trouble speaking and writing the word Gethrynnyn, and the name just caught on with the rest of the kingdom. Unlike many other gods, Gethrynnyn does not create. He does not give, neither guide nor illuminate. He simply destroys with an undying, primordial rage. Worship of the Furious One, as you can imagine, is not all too common in Ordania. Followers of Fury, or quite frankly, cultists of Fury, claim that the world is flawed and impure, and thus the fat of existence must be shaved away by their inconsolable hands. These people see themselves as pure and righteous, yet they throw tantrums wherever they appear, committing arson upon public property and shouting, "Storm and fire! Storm and fire!" There's something to be said, I think, for improvement by subtraction, but these people are a bit too radical for my taste. With that being said, however, the chance of Gethrynnyn actually manifesting his avatar within the material plane is mercifully low. History shows that he's only appeared a handful of times in the last millennium, and each appearance brought nothing short of a cataclysm upon the lands of Rime. Less likely still to appear within the material is the god of death itself. The devout call it the Nameless Goddess, and although worshippers of death seem to associate it with the aspect of the female, no one really knows if it even is a god or goddess or anything in between. There is no documented occurrence of death manifesting within the material, or even anywhere within the outer planes, for that matter. You couldn't draw a picture of it, and yet it's everywhere. Most tend toward the same basic design, however, in art and in theater, of a tall, skeletal figure in a dark hooded robe, bearing a scythe the size of immemorial tower. A chilling image, but I think our lack of knowing tends to dramatize these things, wouldn't you agree? Death could just as easily be something as unassuming as a small puppy, a simple lick of unconsciousness. Again, I digress with the philosophical, but when it comes to death, it is the most basic concept, and yet suggests seemingly endless implications. There really isn't much more to say, in summary. Maybe I can brighten things up a bit by telling you about my favorite god. Yes, I do have a favorite. In that, if I were a religious man, I'd make an actual effort of daily worship to him. Enter the god of discovery, Cortex. If Gethrynnyn is the furious one, then Cortex is the curious one. Shepherd to all scholars, guardian of the truth, keeper of the Akashic library, the hidden realm where all knowledge is stored. He is a young god, from what I've read. Well, young in comparison to most other gods, and we know this because there appears to be no mention of his existence in the annals of history until after language evolved beyond simple drawings and hieroglyphs, where gods such as Helio and Meridia are clearly depicted. Even the elves don't have records mentioning Cortex before the previous aeon. Ironic, perhaps, that we would know so little about such a scholarly deity. But there's the funny bit about Cortex, you see. He is a master of truth, and yet refuses to give it away freely. The Church of Cortex reflects this ideology from top to bottom. They maintain a strict hierarchy among their members, and are quick to turn away anyone who might abuse the knowledge they learn. Their, quote, churches are unlike the ones you're likely familiar with. No temple, mosque, or cathedral is built quite like the pyramid libraries of the Church of Cortex. As the name suggests, churches of Cortex are large, pyramidic libraries containing numerous floors brimming with bookshelves. The most basic and accessible knowledge is located on the bottom floor, naturally, and is actually open to public access. No membership required. I hear you can even be cleared to enter the second floor without membership. But such special permissions are usually only given to Ordanian officials, lords, high-ranking knights, and the like. I almost gained access once. Almost. If that simpering magistrate didn't drink himself into a coma the night I met him. A story for another time, surely. As you can imagine, the content becomes much more profound and esoteric the higher you climb within the pyramid libraries. What wonders await at the top only an elite few have witnessed, and fewer still who have been willing to leave their hermitage to proclaim so themselves. The bureaucracy of it all is what ultimately turns me away from the Church of Cortex, in truth. Too much bootlicking, pouring drinks for your seniors, etc., ad infinitum. I mean, I understand why they do it that way. They don't want just anyone to be able to learn, I don't know, how to open an ethereal rift to the hells or something. But I know my intentions are pure. I'd just be wasting my time scrubbing floors and sorting encyclopedias for years, when I have all the means to learn the secrets of the cosmos on my own, by my own merits, and in a fraction of the time. I'm sorry, my love. I got a bit heated there for a moment. It used to be a dream of mine, to ascend the Pyramid Library, to read the most arcane texts known to rhyme, to study among the most gifted prodigies the world has to offer. But it would appear my destiny lies elsewhere. Thank you, sweetheart. That means a great deal to me. I may not be privileged to the Church of Cortex's secrets, but that just means the truth of the cosmos will be all the more rewarding when I finally uncover it for myself. Now then, that leaves just 3 deities left to cover, I believe. Goodness, you asked me to tell you of the gods. Now I'm afraid our bedroom has all but become a lecture hall. I appreciate you hanging in there and listening to everything, my darling. I know I have a tendency to drone on and on from time to time. So long as you're comfortable, my beloved, then I'm happy. Besides, I've saved the best for last. Now, I shall tell you of the dark gods, names you won't hear casually spoken in the streets of Cadence. Who better to start off introductions than the Archdevil Supreme of the 9 Hells himself? I'm talking, of course, about Lucideus, the god of fire. Frankly, I should hope the knowledge that he is Archdevil of the 9th and deepest layer of all the hells should already give some indication as to the nature of this mischievous god. Every devil in every corner of every plane owes their allegiance to him, even if most of them have ulterior motives for doing so. In fact, Lucideus thrives off of the ulterior motives of others. The more treachery lurking in one's heart, the easier they are to be exploited. If they can be led to believe, they will ultimately get what they want. Such is the way of the devil. A game of give and take, where the rulebook is as thick as a loaf of bread, and every page within it contains asterisks with footnotes, and footnotes upon footnotes, and the table of contents is nowhere to be found. But if you break the rules, your very soul becomes forfeit to the 9 layers. It's an easy wager to posit that Lucideus has far more direct dealings with Mortalkind than any other god we know of. In fact, he is father to the only demigod in existence, again, that we know of. Zephyria, the progenitor of the race we know today as tieflings. The gods frown upon procreation with mortals, and so Lucideus was scorned and cursed by the Empyrean Three. Should Lucideus attempt to mate with a mortal again, the creature to emerge from such an unholy union would be nothing short of a graceless abomination. This is why Zephyria is the only known demigod. It's rather an interesting taboo for a god to procreate with a mortal, but I suppose the balance of power within the ethersphere would be harshly skewed if it were a regular practice, and life on Rhyme, I imagine, would suffer from such a chaotic power struggle among the gods. Speaking of struggle, I have a profound question to ask, purely hypothetical. Do you believe that mortal kind would be as advanced as it is today without the practice of warfare? You don't need to answer that. I simply asked in order to introduce you to the goddess of warfare, Apollyon. Like Gethrynnyn, Apollyon is a destroyer rather than a creator, but her followers practice violence for an entirely different reason than any cultist of fury. While Gethrynnyn's followers can be a bit overzealous, they're not intrinsically evil, for they believe they're making the world a better place by burning villages or toppling buildings. Apollyon doesn't give a damn about what kind of place the world is, so long as there is war. It's a very primitive and polarizing set of beliefs she enforces. Kill or be killed, eat or be eaten, conquer or be conquered. The world is beset with wolves and sheep and nothing in between. No room for birds or fish or even a friendly little cat to keep you company. She is a brutish god who sees all in black and white. Some crave such simplicity, but I prefer the comfort of colors and blue skies, personally, as I'm sure you do, my darling. But I suppose I can also see the merit, as twisted and extreme as it has become. The core of Apollyon's ideals is that if you are not struggling, you are weakening. It's a nice idea, but unfortunately, the only application of this principle in the eyes of the war goddess is to kill, raid, and pillage until one day you fall in battle and are reborn upon the endless battlefields of Archeron, where war is the only constant. And so, finally, we come to the ninth god. A god whose very existence is denied by many, while others know that it is perfectly real and simply deny its godhood. I am speaking of Synth, the god in the abyss. The abyss is a bottomless plane of darkness where all demons are born. Demons are not devils, but hopefully you knew that. Demons cannot be reasoned with. They are reasonless, mindless beings who know only their own thirst for blood. And Synth resides in the abyss, herding the demons as a shepherd herds sheep. Darkness, madness, chaos, these are the domains of the god in the abyss. For as terrifying as it sounds, Synth is also a very curious figure, because it very much blurs the once rigid lines we have to define what a god actually is. No one knows what its avatar looks like. Supposedly, wherever Synth appears, it is too dark to discern anything other than its many eyes and sharp teeth. And it is anathema to Cortex and all he stands for, because Synth is known to give away information freely, sometimes without even requesting a favor in return. However, the price for Synth's unholy erudition is almost invariably madness. It's all kept very hush-hush by the clergy, and for once, I believe they're right to do so. Quite honestly, my darling, I'm afraid I've put you at risk simply by uttering its name to you, but the alternative was simply a lie, that there are only 8 gods in existence, when Synth hides among them all the same as the 9th god of rhyme. And I could never lie to you, my beloved. But if you simply resist the darkness, if you focus on order, straight lines, right angles, holy geometry, and the like, you shouldn't have much issue resisting the call of the abyss. Unfortunately for me, it's a bit more complex than that. But rest assured, my brain shall remain firmly planted inside my skull, without the perversion of extra eyes, teeth, or, heavens forbid, tentacles. Well, with that, congratulations. You now know about each of the gods, even that little one people like to argue about. I know I've taken quite a few liberties to explain them all to you, but I very much appreciate you listening. Unless you've gone and fallen asleep on me. But that's okay too. Like I said, my darling, so long as you're comfortable, I'm happy. I should probably get up, if only for a moment, so I can stretch my legs and relieve myself. You should do the same, sweetheart. But if you're already dug in, then I'll leave you to your rest, my dear. But don't you worry, I'll be coming right back to join you shortly. I love you so very much, and I'm incredibly lucky to have you in my life. I hope you know how much you mean to me. Now, no more words, only rest. Sweet dreams of beauty and peace. Good night, love. And I'll see you in the morning.